Today we're going to tear down the most powerful engine I've ever had on my stand. Not the Viper engines, not all the truck engines, the LSs, the Mustang engines, not even the AMG engines I've had on this stand make as much power as this does. This is the 4.4 liter hot V twin turbo V8 out of a 2014 BMW M5. This produces 560 horsepower and 500 foot-pounds of torque. This is a monstrosity. And in fact, I've had this here for a little while. I bought this from a viewer of the channel, and they said while they were doing a pull, the engine shut off, which is kind of scary because this came out of a manual transmission vehicle, and if the engine locks up and you don't press the clutch, that means the back tires lock up. So hopefully they didn't crash it or there's no issues there. I heard they replaced the engine and everything is good now, but we're going to take this apart and try to find out what happened. This is one of the rarest core engines that I've ever had the chance to buy. Now, I don't normally buy engines from viewers of the channel. I have before, but most of the time when people offer me engines, they're across the pond or they're in a place where the shipping costs would just totally decimate any profit I'd have on any of the parts. In this case, these parts are so rare that I will likely throw nothing away. Every single part on this engine that is bespoke or special to this engine is valuable. This is the S63Tu. Now the TU stands for Technical Update, which that means it's the second iteration of this engine. They have better injectors than their predecessor, better fuel pumps than their predecessor. They fixed a lot of the issues. They didn't fix them all. Now in the past, I've had my gripes and complaints about the hot V twin turbo V8s, and most of my complaints are based on the fact that they put those in normal cars that people expect to be more reliable. However, in an M car, you expect there to be breakthroughs in modern technology, and that's not a pun, but you expect to have all of the bells and whistles, all of the crazy tech, and you also expect a certain level of maintenance and unreliability because it's a special car. So I'm not really against these engines in those cars. I just wouldn't buy an X5 or X6M with one of these. There's no way. Not with the way those things get treated. Now, the initial complaint of this engine is that it's locked up or it barely turns over. So let's validate that complaint. Maybe it was just the direction. I'm sure. Oh, it turns backwards just a hair. See, it's not locked up. There's nothing wrong here. That is way too much force. This is bad. The first thing I'd like to do is pull the plugs. We got to get the coils out. Well, these plugs look pretty fresh, and I don't see anything bent. It's got a very small gap. That's just how they are. I don't see any signs for concern just from looking at the plugs. While we're here, we're going to remove the fuel rail from this bank. I believe most of this stuff has been disconnected to swap stuff over from the donor engine. Sure makes this job easy. High pressure fuel pump. See the same thing on the opposing bank. I think I can get this fuel line out. I think I can get this fuel line out. It's fine. Other stuff's coming off with it. It's fine. Yes. Next, we'll get the alternator removed. The alternator's off. The next thing I'd like to do is focus on the downpipes here. I brought my socket in to get these loose, but these were already loose. You got to get these out to get the heat shields off. You got to get the heat shields off to get the downpipes off. And I think this just does the things here. think these come off with the shield, right? There they are. Get the brackets loose. Now you don't have to take these all the way out. I just loosen them up. This is a little extra wiggle room. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. I'll unbolt the brackets from the head. And now for the clamps. Let's get blue for this task. There's one. There's the other. Now, one difference that I see already, and keep in mind this is the first one I've been into, is the earlier N63s, the non-TU, have a cast manifold here. Now, I don't know if this is S63 specific, or if it's a TU specific, or it's S63 TU. I'm sure someone can chime in and tell me. This is just the first time I've been into one of these. Now we're going to start cracking loose all these lines, coolant and oil. And by start, we're going to get the right size tooling, because apparently you can only get this one off. We can get this crankcase ventilation piece. Oh, we're leaking coolant. It's a good thing that's not an oil line. More fittings. Got that out. But wait, there's more. All right, now we can get all these lines out of the way. Perfect. Now the turb skis are almost ready to come off. Next we need to unbolt the oil return. It's pretty commonplace for leaks on these hot V engines. You just gotta use a long extension and a T30. Ain't not a big deal. Lastly, we can unbolt the clamps. So to get the turbo off, you just gotta gently, just kind of. And then I of course forgot the vacuum line on the wastegate, but that's fine. See, it's fine. Now I can get on the clamp on the other one. Oh, that one's a little on there. Let's use the hammer. All right, now I think we can get the line off the wastegate. And again, gently just rip it off the engine. Let's take a look at these turbos. It's just a smidge of play, but the wheels don't hit the housing in that one. Not in that one either. Normally, when I pull these off of an N63, the turbos are pretty much, like, I don't like to sell them. I mean, I do sell them. They're not really worth a lot of money. But the S63Tu is another story, and this one's clearly had a coolant leak for quite some time. Now, I don't think that's the actual turbo. Yuck, why did I touch all that? I bet that if we go over to the lines, look at that. They put these non-serviceable band clamps on here. I don't know what they were thinking. And they leak. So those were leaking. That's likely what caused all this buildup of stuff. I'm sure all this stuff will clean up. I don't think that has anything to do with the condition of the turbos. I don't really see any issues with the wastegate. The exhaust wheel looks good. Let's look at this other one here. I said let's look at this other one here. Stubborn. Yeah, this all looks pretty good. These might be worth selling. I think I'm going to give it a shot. Now as we peek into the valley, we can see clear coolant leaks. Of course, I took fittings out, so stuff leaked out. But that didn't create all this buildup. That's been leaking for some time. I think that's a pretty common problem with these. And I don't think the parts are very expensive to rectify that. But I bet it leaks so slowly that most people don't notice unless you can smell it. Now we're going to start working on the valley here. We've got some stuff to get out of the way. just start zipping some stuff out. We've got a couple clamps here. I'm going to take these out the right way. And there are the tubular exhaust manifolds.
Totally tubular.
All right, let's get these zipped out. Wait. I got to start in front. It should just come out. I think this one. Oh, actually, I think the way the turbos are fed uses different cylinders. I bet these things sound different too. I'll just pull all these out here. And this one comes out first. It looks like I need to take these heat shields out. Let's do that. Look at that. I wonder if those are worth anything. All right, there's hidden in junk here. Oh yeah, she's been leaking. We're almost done. There's some more lines. Not gonna happen there. Hey, it's starting to look pretty clean in there. Here's another look at the valley. This is usually where the oil leaks are. This isn't super dirty. I've seen much worse. Now we're gonna focus on the injectors. Now there's a special puller. They're very cheap, like 25, 30 bucks online to get these out. And the last one of these I did, I saw a lot of jokes saying that I probably have a lot of practice getting these out. And I mean, yes, I've torn down a lot of these engines. There's just not S63s. I'm sure that's what you're getting at. I mean, I have no idea what else you could possibly be referring to. Onto the other bank. So here's what the injectors look like when they're removed. They're a lot smaller, a lot more compact than the early N63 non-TU or N54 injectors. And they're also about 358 times more reliable. Before we start peeling valve covers off, I want to get the intake manifolds off. So we'll start with the left-hand bank. Who put the map sensor in the way here? Why would you? Okay. Any bolts over here? Nope, just the one, totally obscured by the map sensor. Intake number 1 is off. Well, for a DI engine, this looks fantastic. Makes me wonder if this was blasted recently. DI BMWs, especially the early ones, this is not an early one, but the early ones, you need to walnut blast the intake valves periodically. You can't just ignore it. The other thing that's interesting is the predecessor, the S85 V10, had beautiful intake ports. These just look like cast ports. I mean, when you're forced induction, maybe it just doesn't matter. Onto the right-hand bank. Clearly this has been off. And this side has more buildup on it. Still not terrible though. While we're here, we're going to get this battery cable out of the way. There's also a vacuum line I'd like to remove. Nope, apparently not. Next we have some bracketry. These are the boost control solenoids. More brackets. Now we can start getting the bolts out of the valve cover to get the valve cover off. See, it's not too bad. think I got them all. I'm sure there's a place to put some pressure on this thing. Upwards pressure. No? Okay. That did not work. I can't believe it didn't work. Well, let's give it some taps. And there we are. First glance, everything looks pretty good. Valvetronic looks okay. That's this crazy contraption here. The V8's got that as part of the technical update. So everything looks pretty good. It's very clean in here. This is dirt from external engine stuff, not internal. I don't see anything out of place. Some signs here and here. Some material going between the roller, which is right there, and the cam lobe, but that's really minor, super minor. Guide looks to be in pretty good shape. Chain seems to have plenty of tension. I don't see any cause for concern up here. Before we move on to getting the valve cover off of the right-hand bank, we need to take the vacuum pump off. Now just a couple bolts for the valve cover. Just like the other side, we'll just give this a couple taps. Hopefully I didn't miss any bolts. And we're off. Same story on this bank. Everything's nice and clean. I don't see any cause for concern. All the Valvetronic is in place. It's very unlikely tonight that I'm going to take this part of the cylinder head apart, just because each one of these will take my eye out, and I only have 2 of them, and there are 8 of these. That's just not fair. So I am going to probably take this one off so I can take a look at the journals on the camshaft. This one will stay together. Now we're going to switch gears and see if we can get this crank pulley off. That's a big bolt. Oh no, I ruined it. All right, now we can unbolt the water pump. The bolts are out. Yes, they are. They are indeed removed. What gives? Let's get a pan underneath this thing. I'm just going to give it a little tap. Why are you still on here? Am I missing something? I've done this before. Maybe blue needs to help. Whoa, 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 whoa. I definitely don't want to drop this water pump. It's a genuine BMW water pump. Look how nice that looks. No corrosion. Pulley. A little bit of wear on the pulley, but you know, you can replace, no, can't replace the pulley. It's just how it comes. It is a nice water pump though. For the scrap bin, do not use a used water pump for your BMW. In fact, I just got a neutral feedback on eBay on an engine, and the guy was complaining that we cut the coolant lines. Used BMW coolant hoses? Isn't that why you needed a motor in the first place? All right, let's get back to tearing the engine down. All right, now we're going to remove the Vano solenoids. So here's what the Vano solenoids look like, and they look pretty good. I don't see any chunks of metal or bearing material. They look nice. The oil looks pretty clean. It came off of these things. Now we're going to remove these front timing covers. So I pulled those off so I could get a better look at the plastic timing guides. What's weird is it looks like the tensioner isn't really pushing on the center of that. But I don't know if that's how it's supposed to be or not. Doesn't look like it pivots. See, on this side, it's much more centered on the plastic. Now I'm at the stage where I have to pull something apart. Wait, I'm always there. My point is there are special little divots in the camshafts here that line up with the head bolts. And for me to get access to all the head bolts on the intake side on both banks, I need to be able to rotate the camshafts. However, I can't presently do that because I am guessing that the bottom end, there's a problem in the basement, and that's why it won't turn over. So my plan is to take the exhaust cam gear off, the Vanos gear. We'll get this off, we'll pull the chain off, and then without the chain on there, you should be able to turn the cams over and have full access to all the head bolts. That's the idea. I'm also going to take out the tensioners in here. We're going to see how this goes. This is going to work. At least I think this is going to work. This feels like it's under a lot of tension. Maybe I should put my hands in here. Yeah. We're just going to we'll unbolt the tensioner next. I may have to take that pin out, kind of like ease the tension on this chain, or both of them. That's fine. Ooh, that's violent. There's one tensioner. It's pretty well made. This one, though, I need blue for this. Look at that. These things look like they're in pretty good shape. All right, now can I get... Oh, this might work. This might work. I'm going to have to take that guide off of both sides. Take this. And take that. Now it's time to remove the intake cam and this guide. So we're going to crap these loose. Ooh, it did stuff. And at this point, should be able to, looks like I'm going to have to take that pin out. We'll do that next. Unfortunately, I've discovered another problem. There is a bolt that holds the head to the timing cover. It's right here, and on the non-TU engines, it's very easy to get access to them when this cover that's on those is out of the way. But on this, I have to get this intake cam gear out of the way, and it is like that on both heads, so I'm going to have to knock these loose without chain tension. It's going to be fine. Maybe not. It's fine. So now we're going to wiggle that off of there. We'll get the chain out of the way. There's access to the bolt, which I guess that's probably the next thing that we're going to do. Actually, let's go look at the cam and the cam caps that just came off this head. Well, the cam journals look fantastic. This thing is beautiful. I don't see any issues here. Well, the cam caps look pretty good. There's a few small signs of wear, but really minor. I wouldn't even say they needed any work to be used. And as you'd suspect, the camshaft looks excellent. No damage worth noting. All right, before we do anything, let's get these two E10s out. Those are Loctited in. Oh, that one just fell in there, it's fine. And we'll put this back on. We'll get this tight to where we can rotate the camshaft so that we can get access to all the head bolts. That's the plan. Let's find out what happens here. Well, I think that's it. You can see he's got these little divots. No, I gotta go back a little bit, actually. Yeah, that's it. That's not so bad. Now it is that time to remove the head bolts. Let's see how this goes. Wow. I was expecting more. Before I zip the head bolts the rest of the way out, I need to remove this. This is like a pin bolt that holds this chain guide or chain rail in place. If I don't do that, I won't be able to get the head off. I think that's going to be it. I think everything else should just fall right out. And now I think this head should just lift right off, unless I missed something, which is possible. Something bad has happened. I don't know what it is, but I got it. Well, I think that was from the struggle when I pulled the head off. Let's pull this head gasket. Huh. It's a broken chain guide. Did I do that? I don't know if I did this. That just fits down in there. I could have done that. So that may not be a pre-existing condition. Head gasket, as I expected, looks fantastic. But there's lots of sand in here, and I would wager that this all existed from when I pulled the injectors out. I think that's all junk from the valley, the injector valley. So I'm going to go ahead and get that out of the way so we can get a better look at the bores. What, do you think I was going to use an air nozzle and blow that all over the shop? That's the old Eric. So there's some marks in the cylinder wall. I don't see anything too clearly destroyed. All the stuff wipes up too. Now it's time for some science. Did we expect anything different? So here's a look at the cylinder head. I don't see anything terrible about it. I don't see any cracks. It all looks pretty good. On to the other bank. Let's crap these off. Well, the journals in the head, much like the other side, look excellent. I see no issues here. And as you'd expect, the camshaft also looks really good. It's a little bit more wear than the other bank. But when you get to the caps have more wear. Now, I don't think these are terrible by any stretch, but they're not perfect. I think they'd work just fine. All right, now we can get this cam gear off. Get the chain out of the way, and we're going to get those two external Torx bolts. Now I can reinstall this cam gear so we can rotate the cam. I know it doesn't just spin, does it, right? Maybe it does. I think it does, actually. And before we get any further, let's get this pin out. Now, of course, I run the risk of making contact between the pistons and the valves if any of the cylinders are at top dead center. But there's no other way around this because I cannot rotate the bottom end. I guess I could try to dive into that first, but I really would just prefer to do this. I don't think the chances are very high, and I'm not going to power through a bunch of resistance. So we're just going to carefully, just like that. Okay, let's crack these loose. They don't really fight at all. Okay, this should come right off. Hopefully the chain doesn't fight me, which it could, and it will, probably. Well, it peed oil on me, but I survived. There's the head gasket. Looks nice. Same deal, we're going to get all the sand out of the cylinders. Well, aside from the kind of grody looking pistons, I don't really see anything wrong here. I don't see any signs that the pistons hit the cylinder head. I don't see any pock marks from detonation. I still can't tell why this is locked up at this point. And the cylinder head looks excellent. I don't really see any major issues. It's science time. I don't see any issues. Perfect score. Now it is time to start unbolting the front timing cover. Oh, the smell from these bolts coming out is less than ideal. Okay, I am pretty sure I got them all. It's time to remove that front cover. I'll just see here. Let's get old Blue on the job. Well, I thought this might help us, but probably not a BMW timing guide. It's a little sketch. Look how clean this is. Looks excellent. So I did pry on it right there. Oh no, I ruined a used BMW timing guide. How dare I? But I don't really see anything chunking or coming apart. I kind of expected to see a bunch of guide falling apart and a pickup full of guide, but I don't think we're going to see that. Now I think I can carefully remove these. Very careful with these, carefully. Now we're going to rotate this thing upside down so we can peel the oil pans off of it. I didn't say oil pants. Oh, there's coolant. There's oil. Now let's peel the lower oil pan off. Oh, spring loaded. It's behind door number 1. Oh. Well, it was going okay. So at first glance, the oil in the upper pan just looks like oil. But then we put the light on it, and I don't know if you can easily tell, but there's some sparkles, not a lot. You can see a couple pieces of glistening metal in there that aren't supposed to be there. That's worrisome. Also, the pan design is significantly different than the first generation of N or S63. The oil pump looks like it bolts to the upper oil pan, which is different than the last. It bolted to the block on the last. There's also this chain that looks pretty similar, but it's a little bit different design because of the way the oil pump mounts. I'm also curious to see if I'm going to have to remove this. On the predecessor, the first generation N63 or S63, you have to remove the oil filter, which we're going to remove it anyway, but I'm curious to see if there's bolts hiding behind it. Pickup, nice and clean. And this is a vacuum storage reservoir. So this is what's bad. This just has a tinge of metallic hue in places that you don't want to see it. It's not good. In fact, there's some, I think I'm saying it right, debris. Hard S. I have the right tool, I just didn't bring it to work today because I'm a bad planner. And I don't think about things like this until I'm in it. So, time for some backwards channel locks. Okay, it does work better when you go this way. I know that. I'm going to let this thing drain for a few minutes. Next, let's unbolt this oil pump. Did that help us? Oh yeah, she's loose. But how do we get the chain? Oh, I think if we unbolt the tensioner here, let's do that. So that appears to be in one piece. Now, can I get the chain off the sprocket? Oh yeah, I'm sure I can. Excellent. Let's see, we need to pour some oil out of it. Not the bolts. Now we're going to take this apart. Oh yeah. I don't even have to hit it with a hammer. There's one outer housing. Look at those chunky gears in there. Okay, I do have to hit it with a hammer, I suppose. Well, that sounds cool. Something is prohibiting movement, and I don't like it. Look at that. There's our gear set. Then there's a little key that comes out that I just lost. Then that comes off. Wow. That is a cool oil pump. Look at that thing. It's a work of art. Well, this is a pretty sophisticated oil pump. A little bit of damage on that rotor. Similar damage on the inside of this gear, but it's really not that bad. Few marks on the housing, but this is the showstopper. What a cool oil pump. Now, I have no idea if this has any value or not. Some used BMW oil pumps are worth hundreds of dollars. Some are free. None of them are water pumps, though. Those all go in the trash or scrap bin. I'll get this out of the way real quick. Now we can start on the upper oil pan. I think I'm gonna use air for this. These are tight. Did I get them all? Let's try pulling on it. Nope, that didn't work. Just place the pry right here. Oh, that's it? That's all it took? Well. Uh-huh. That's bad. One-time use. So right off the bat, the coloration that you're seeing, the blues and the greens, that is probably not from the situation why this engine is locked up. It's more from the manufacturing process. What's interesting to me is that this, being an S63, is supposed to have a forged crankshaft, and this looks cast to me. Uh-oh. So I just looked at the block serial number. It's for sure an S63, so maybe it's just the way it looks. I couldn't tell you. It's the first time I've been inside of an S63. One thing we haven't done is try to turn this thing over in a while, and I don't see any reason why we can't do that, or at least try to. I think what I'm going to end up doing is pulling on the main caps first. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. This should turn over if there wasn't a problem here. So we're going to take all the main caps out first, kind of backwards from normal, and then we'll work on the rods and pistons we can get to, and eventually that crankshaft will turn. I hope. I see no issues yet. I would have thought I would have found the problem by now. Oh, I had to say something, didn't I? Well, we know why it won't turn over. So good, 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 not good. This is a spun main bearing. This shell has been grabbed by the crank and spun. I can't tell you how far it is yet. Maybe just 180 degrees. Maybe it's stacked on top of another one, which I don't think that's the case here. But that is enough to lock the engine up. Now the real question is going to be, is there any damage to any of the rod bearings? And can I turn the engine over without the mains in it? I think what I might do is install one of these, at least loosely, to keep the crank from trying to walk up when I turn it over. It might kick these bearings out and allow me to get all the rods and pistons out. So we're going to install this one. When I say install, I'm not going to torque this thing down. I'm just going to run the bolts down just a little. No ugga-duggas will be used in this situation. Perfect. Okay. Now let's see if this will turn over. I'm going to put the camera on that rear main bearing and so we can watch what happens. Please turn over. Please be nice. There we are. So as you can see, the bearing is rotating with the crank. That's not the way this is supposed to work. This block is going to be heavily damaged. But at least now I can get all the rods and pistons out. And hopefully they're all good. Hey, I need that. Give it back to me. On to the next two. I think this chain is becoming a problem. This is good. Going great. The final pair. See if this will come off. Gonna have to unbolt one of the engine stand bolts. Oh no. I think I'm gonna unbolt the other side here. Just get it loose. So that should be good enough. It's not sketchy. Just don't think about what I'm doing. That's fine. All right, now this should come out with the crankshaft. Should, being the operative word. Nope. There's a handle. That's how you do it. Okay. Can I get this? This is like welded on here. I'm gonna need some hammer time. Let's see if we can get this off. I'm going to use my chisel driver here. Don't want to do any damage. That is pretty stuck. I really want to know what this bearing looks like, but I don't think we're going to get the chance. I'm just tearing it up. Let's try a hammer and a chisel. This is almost useless. This is the seam. I promise you the seam is here. Let's go to the other side. Maybe the other side's less welded. Okay, here's the seam on the other side. This is one of the most stuck bearings I've ever dealt with. In fact, this is probably the most. I've never had a bearing do this quite this bad. Now, if you ran a machine shop and this crank came in, what would you do besides telling them to buy a new one? How would you fix this? Would you grind it away? I'm sure you wouldn't do what I'm doing. And that's okay, because this is not a machine shop. It's not coming off, guys. She's done. Well, let's just start off with the rod bearings. 100,000 miles. Pretty worn. Not torn up, just worn. These are very narrow shells, and I think that's a big contributing factor to bearing life. It's the size of the shell. Rods and pistons. Some vertical scratches, a little deep there, but overall these look okay. I don't see any cracked ring lands or anything crazy. They all look pretty okay. It's just some wear on the coating. I think these are still sellable components. I mean, they're not worth as much as new ones, but for somebody on a budget, I don't know why you would have one of these cars on a budget, but if you were that person, maybe this is the answer. Yeah, some more vertical wear. Really not bad though. Now let's talk about the crank. This looks so good until it's destroyed. And when I say destroyed, it's not broken in half or anything crazy. But while this could be saved, I don't know that it's worth it. This is a very expensive crankshaft. They're very expensive. $1,200 to $1,500 for a good used crank. But how much is it going to take to make this right? On top of that, what's going to be the outcome? Is the person that's going to spend $1,200 to $1,500 on a crankshaft willing to take the risk? I don't know, guys. It might end up in the scrap bin. Here's a better look at that spun main bearing. And that didn't just complete one revolution. That spun until the engine seized. That is why the engine would not turn over, and I can't blame it. That's not good. Here are the rest of the main bearings. Again, pretty worn, except for the thrust bearings looks beautiful. So the rest of these are pretty worn, but they're not torn up. What is torn up, however, is the number 5 main cap. That is toast. Absolutely toast. As I believe the block is going to be as well. It's unfortunate. It's a pretty expensive block if it were good. But this is going to take so much machine work, I bet it outweighs the cost of the block itself. The rest of the block appears to be in really good shape. I'll flip it over here in a minute and look at the bores. The bores don't really look too bad. There's a little bit of vertical wear in that cylinder. But the coating isn't heavily damaged. Same story on this bank. I mean, it's surely worn, but it's not destroyed. A couple vertical scratches, probably the worst one right there. Okay, I lied. These are probably the worst ones here. And it's still not very bad, but I don't know what it would take to make those perfect. That may be expensive. Sorry I made you guys wait on this oil filter. It looks pretty clean. See, in a situation like this, it didn't trash the main bearing into pieces or a rod bearing into pieces, so there wasn't a lot of metal suspended in the oil. So the filter, you could have pulled the filter and maybe not found any metal. There's the wide pleat there. It doesn't look that bad. This engine locked up during a highway pull or shortly thereafter, which usually means that someone was wide open throttle for an extended period of time. That sounds like they were in it for minutes, but that's not the case here. This is a 560 horsepower car. It takes literal seconds to go from normal speeds to some pretty high speeds. I understand it's not the lightest car out there, but it's not a Brinks truck, it's not a tank, it's also not a new M5. It's still pretty fast. But why did it trash one main bearing? I really can't put my finger on why. Turbo BMWs have bearing trouble, that's kind of a thing, but not a main bearing. It's usually a rod bearing situation, and the rest of the bearings were just normal wear for 100,000 miles. I know they look pretty rough, but that's normal for 100,000 miles. Was it just too much force on too much RPM for the main bearing? Was a piece of debris caught in there? Was it machined wrong? Was it a defect? Did it get an air pocket in the oiling system at high RPM? I don't have an answer for you there. Was it related to the rear-mounted oil pump? I don't know. But I will say this. If it was tuned, which it could have been, usually a tuning-related failure is a melted piston, broken rings, cracked ring lands, bent rods. We didn't see any of that in this. I don't think it was over-revved either, because we would have seen piston-to-valve contact if that were the case. I think that something happened in the oiling system at some point in time or at the very end, and it caused that main to spin, which ultimately kind of destroys the block and the crank. The crank is very expensive. The block is not cheap either. But I think the effort it takes to save either one of those may far outweigh the value of those once they are repaired. Because you have to understand, if I sell a crankshaft that's been fixed, I can't get as much money for it as I could a crankshaft that's never had damage. And the same is true for a block. So I spend more money to make less. It may not make sense to have them fixed. They may end up in the scrap bin. But there's still a lot of good parts on this. I did pay good money for this as a core, but I was happy to. I got a lot of good parts to sell, the turbos, the intercoolers, I got one DME with it, all the fuel system parts. I feel like I did pretty well, even though some big ticket items were damaged in this. I'll still be okay. I'm just glad I had the chance to buy one of these engines. These cores are really hard to find. Usually when one of these blows up, they either take them back to the dealership as a core because they buy a brand new engine, or they keep them around for spare parts. And I normally don't get the chance to buy some of these high horsepower European engines. This is the most powerful engine that we've had on the channel. So thank you for the person that sold this to me. I appreciate this. I know I paid for it, but I still appreciate it. The thought means everything to me. So if you'd like to buy parts off of this engine or anything else I've torn down, or if you want parts off of this Sierra, it's not a quadra-steer, but the rear axle is a little not straight. I'm going to leave our email in the video description. You can also go to Importapart.com and peruse our inventory. I've been uploading our parts cars just about every single week. If you find something on the website that you like that you can add to your cart, all you need to do is use the code IDOCARS, and it'll save you 10% off of anything on the site that you can add to your cart. So I really appreciate that. Really hope you enjoyed this teardown as always. I love all the comments, all the feedback, and even the criticism. I love it all, and I'll catch you on the next one.